Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics: The Young and the Restless spoilers. Amy arrived in Nice with nothing but grief buried beneath her bones. Her eyes hollow from days without sleep and months of silent suffering. The French authorities had barely finished processing Damien's broken body when she demanded to see him, to touch the lifeless skin of the boy she once carried in her arms. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Now scarred and drained of warmth. But when her trembling fingers reached for him and her sobs filled the sterile room, it wasn't only sorrow that rose in her. It was fire. She knew Damien hadn't simply fallen victim to bad luck or an act of God. She saw the bruises, the marks of restraint, the signs of a struggle no one could explain. And deep in her bones, she knew what they all refused to admit. Damien had been murdered. Carter may have wielded the weapon, but he was just a shadow of the real force pulling strings behind him. And that force, she suspected, had the name Cain Ashby. In the days that followed, Amy did not collapse. She did not sink into the arms of grief, or allow herself to be pitied. Instead, she rose composed and cold, drawing strength from the sheer injustice that had torn her family apart. She was a dying woman with months left at best, her bones already aching from the cancer that devoured her silently each night. But none of that mattered now. Death was no longer something to fear. It was a deadline, a motivator, a ticking clock beneath her ribs. She would not allow Damien's soul to wander the world without justice. She would not enter the grave without forcing someone to pay. Nate flew to her side when he heard the news, his heart shattering for the woman who had once taken him in like a son whose wisdom and resilience had shaped him. He offered help, money, legal aid, even his own hands if she needed them. But Amy shook her head. She saw in Nate not a weapon, but a target. She knew the system would crush him if he aligned himself with her. Subscribe our channel for more latest updates. Now Nate had a future, and she had none. Her path was already carved in stone, drenched in blood and finality. She pushed him away gently, lovingly, but with finality. If vengeance were to be exacted, it would be hers and hers alone. For weeks, Amy worked quietly in the shadows. She made contacts, paid informants, uncovered truths that had been buried beneath layers of lies and digital erasure. She followed money trails that looped back to Cain's estate, uncovered communications between Carter and someone using a burner phone registered in the same region. Bit by bit, the pieces began to form an outline of betrayal and manipulation. She didn't need a confession. She needed confrontation, one soaked in truth, pain, and consequence. And so when the night came, it was not without preparation. Carter and Cain, both unaware of the trap closing in, woke to find themselves bound in the dark concrete cellar of an abandoned chateau on the outskirts of Nice, their hands tied behind them, legs restrained, mouths dry, and heads pounding from the sedatives Amy had slipped into their drinks. It wasn't hard. Carter was arrogant, and Cain, despite his paranoia, had let his guard down, thinking the storm had passed. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. But Amy was the storm. She stood between them, her eyes no longer soft, but sharpened into blades of steel, and the silence that surrounded her was suffocating. Neither man expected to see her, not like this, not wielding control, not breathing with rage so palpable it could scorch the walls. When she finally spoke, it was not in desperation, but in fury, her voice raw, accusing, laced with unbearable grief. She screamed one question again and again, as if the echo might unravel the truth. Why did Damien have to die? At first, Carter chuckled, his mouth twisted with arrogance, spitting empty threats as if he still believed in his own invincibility. Cain sat quietly, defiant but wary, calculating his chances. Amy stared at them both as if weighing their lives in her hands, and perhaps she walked over to a nearby table where surgical instruments lay in perfect order. No chaos here, only precision, intent. When neither man spoke truthfully, when their bravado drowned out remorse, Amy moved. Without hesitation, she lifted Damon's severed finger, preserved in ice, and slammed it on the table in front of them. Her voice cracked only once. "This is the price of your silence." Neither man laughed after that. Tears welled in Cain's eyes, not from pain, but from the dawning realization that this woman, whom he had once dismissed as harmless, was now the executioner of his fate. Subscribe our channel for more latest updates. Carter began to squirm, his confidence dissolving into fear as the stakes became blood. Amy didn't weep, shouldn't scream anymore. Her grief had evolved into something colder, deeper. She wasn't looking for sympathy or explanations. She was searching for accountability. And now that she had them both, the dance of vengeance had begun. Days passed, and no one knew where Kane and Carter were. Amy sent no messages, made no public declarations. She didn't want a spotlight. She wanted answers. Each day, she returned to the cellar calmly, meticulously peeling away their lies the way a surgeon peels away skin. She asked about meetings, about phone calls, about the night of Damien's death. Each falsehood cost them something. Fingernails, blood, dignity. But Amy was not cruel for cruelty's sake. She was exacting, focused. She recorded every confession, every fragment of the plan Carter finally spilled when his resolve shattered. The recordings would be her legacy, the truth that would survive even when her lungs no longer breathed. Subscribe our channel for more. Latest update. In those final days of interrogation, Carter finally admitted it. He had killed Damien, strangled him after drugging his drink. But when asked why, his answer wasn't rooted in personal hatred. It was a contract, a job, money transferred to an offshore account, and the order it hadn't come from Kane directly, but from a silent party whose fingerprints matched the private security firm Kane had hired weeks before. Amy knew then it had always been Kane, not with his hands, but with his influence, his orchestrations, his cowardice. He had wanted Doman out of the picture, perhaps to secure a business deal, or to punish him for getting too close to secrets. Either way, Kane had killed her son just the same. Amy let them live for now. She wanted them to walk out of that cellar branded by their guilt, unable to sleep without hearing Damon's final gas. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. She released them in the dead of night, stripped, weak, and broken, dumping them at the steps of the French authorities. She mailed the recordings to prosecutors across Europe and the United States, along with Damon's autopsy photos, Carter's confession, and the financial records she had stolen from Kane's own estate. Whether they would be imprisoned was no longer her concern. The world would know the truth, and truth was the only weapon she had left. Amy returned to Damien's grave one final time. She didn't cry, she simply sat, a mother who had done what love demanded, no matter the price. Her body was failing. The cancer had spread to her bones, her lungs, her blood. But her soul had never burned brighter. Damien had not died in silence. She had spoken for him, screamed for him, drawn blood for him. And now, with her mission complete, she could face the end not as a victim, but as a warrior. The world of Genoa City would feel the ripple of Amy's vengeance. Kane's empire would crumble under scrutiny. Carter's name would be forever cursed. And those who thought they could murder in shadow would learn. Some mothers never stopped fighting, even when the world says their time is over. Amy was dying, but she had never been more alive, and in the final chapters of her life, she had written a justice no court would ever dare deliver. Let me know if you'd like a continuation. For example, if Amy fakes her death next, if Nate takes up her cause, or if someone tries to stop her legacy from being revealed. Thank you for the additional plot details. I will now seamlessly continue and expand the narrative, adding this dramatic twist involving Carter's confession, Amy's fury, the twisted motive behind Damon's murder, and the shocking name that leaves Amy horrified. The tone will remain intense, emotional, and psychologically immersive, continuing the style of long flowing prose with minimal breaks. The silence that followed the sound of the blade was deafening. Carter's scream ripped through the cellar as blood spilled freely from his mangled hand, his mind catching up with the agonizing truth that one of his fingers was gone, severed in an act of cold, calculated vengeance. The pain was searing, primal, but the fear that now clutched his chest was far more chilling. This wasn't a woman breaking down in grief. This was a mother who had weaponized her suffering into something relentless, merciless. His eyes burned with fury, and yet when he shouted, his voice cracked under the weight of panic. "Why the hell did you cut off my finger?" Amy didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto his, like a hawk's, lips trembling, not from fear, but rage. Her voice was nearly broken, yet sharp enough to cut steel. "You should be dead for what you did," she hissed. "But I need to know who gave the order. Who told you to slaughter my son like an animal?" Carter clenched his jaw, his pride still flaring against the pain. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. But he saw the glint in Amy's eyes, the certainty that she was not finished, not even close. He knew that another scream, another act of defiance would only invite further mutilation. And so defeated, broken, and with trembling breath, Carter whispered what he should have confessed days ago. "I didn't even know the kid. I had no reason to hurt him. It was just a job." Amy narrowed her gaze, her stomach churning. A job, she spat. You murdered my son for money. Carter nodded, sweat beading on his brow, the pain coursing through him like a venom. Yes, I was paid. Hired. There's someone above me, someone powerful. I don't know his real name. Not exactly. We all called him the boss. He wanted Daman gone, not because of something Daman did, but because he was in the way. Amy's heartbeat quickened. In the way of what? Carter hesitated, then closed his eyes, whispering as if afraid to speak the name aloud. He wanted Kane and Lily to get back together. Daman was getting too close to Lily. They were reconnecting. There were feelings. The boss saw that as a threat. Said if Damien stayed, he'd ruin everything. So, I was told to make it look like a tragic accident. Quick, clean, no mess. Just one loose end tied up. The air in the cellar shifted, the temperature somehow dropping despite the heavy blood in the air. Amy staggered back a step as if the truth had physically struck her. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Her mind raced. The idea that someone had Damien killed not out of hatred but convenience. Because his presence interfered with some grand romantic agenda was monstrous. Damien had been a gentle soul, brilliant and loving, full of promise and humanity. And yet someone had seen him as nothing more than a chess piece to be removed. Her lips parted, breath shallow. Who is the boss? Carter lifted his head slowly, and with haunted eyes, he said the name. And Amy's entire world stopped. The name wasn't just a name. It was a bomb. A revelation that cracked through every wall she had built to keep herself focused, sane, composed. She had expected a corporate rival, a jealous lover, maybe even someone from the Newman family. But the truth was far more terrifying. This wasn't just about romantic reunions or emotional manipulation. It was something larger, more calculated. It was someone who had embedded himself deep in Genoa City's power structure, manipulating love, grief, and alliances like threads in a grand, grotesque tapestry. Amy didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her knees gave out, but she caught herself on the table, her fingers curling around the steel frame to stay grounded. The final puzzle piece had clicked into place. Damien's death was not only intentional, it was strategic. A calculated move to orchestrate the return of a golden couple to eliminate an obstacle in a narrative that someone else had authored, and her son had paid with his life. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Her breath came in ragged gasps now. She turned her back to Carter, who slumped in his restraints, unsure if he had spared himself more pain or doomed himself further by speaking the truth. Kane, still bound, watched Amy with a mixture of dread and disbelief. He had never imagined the depths of her fury. He had underestimated her from the beginning. He had treated her like an afterthought, a grieving woman fading in the shadows of her illness, but now he saw the full force of what she had become, a force that could no longer be controlled. Amy wiped her face with a blood-stained cloth, standing taller despite the weight of what she'd heard. The name Carter had given her would haunt her to the grave. But now she had what she needed. The proof, the confession, and the rage that would carry her through the next act. Because this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The name spoken in the dark had triggered something irreversible. A reckoning. A storm that no amount of denial, power, or distance could escape. Damien had died because someone played God. Now Amy would show them the cost of divine interference. She turned back to Carter and whispered, "You just gave me a gift. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. But gifts don't erase crimes." And then she raised the knife again. Would you like me to continue the next segment? Perhaps Amy's next steps after the name is revealed, or the fallout in Genoa City as she prepares her final move. The transcript narrates a gripping and emotional storyline centered around Amy, a terminally ill mother who arrives in Nice devastated by the brutal murder of her son, Damien. Despite her own failing health, Amy transforms her grief into a fierce determination to uncover the truth and exact justice on those responsible. She suspects that Damien's death was not a mere accident but a calculated murder, orchestrated by powerful forces, specifically implicating Kane Ashby as the mastermind behind the crime. With Carter acting as the direct killer, Amy's journey is one of quiet, meticulous investigation where she uncovers hidden truths, tracking financial transactions and secret communications that expose Kane's involvement. She captures Kane and Carter, holding them captive in an abandoned cellar where she exacts a harrowing and precise form of vengeance, cutting off Carter's finger and relentlessly interrogating them in search of the truth. Through relentless, psychological and physical pressure, Carter finally confesses that he was hired to kill Damien, who was seen as an obstacle to a personal agenda involving Kane and Lily's rekindled relationship. The real puppet master, the boss, is revealed to be a powerful figure embedded deeply within Genoa City's elite. Someone Amy had never suspected but whose identity shakes her to her core. This revelation confirms that Damien's murder was a cold, strategic move to manipulate love and alliances for selfish ends. Amy's mission culminates in sending incriminating evidence to authorities worldwide, ensuring the truth will not be buried even after her death. Despite her physical decline, Amy embodies resilience and courage, refusing to be a victim. Instead, she becomes a warrior fighting for justice beyond the reach of conventional law. The story closes with Amy poised for further confrontation, armed with new knowledge that will trigger a reckoning in Genoa City's power structure. Highlights Amy transforms her grief into a relentless quest for justice against those who murdered her son. She uncovers a complex conspiracy involving Kane Ashby orchestrating Damien's murder for personal gain. Amy captures and tortures Kane and Carter to extract confessions and evidence. Damien's death is revealed as a strategic move to manipulate romantic and business alliances. Amy gathers and disseminates irrefutable proof to prosecute the culprits beyond doubt. Despite terminal cancer, Amy remains fiercely alive and determined, embodying the spirit of vengeance. The revelation of the boss signals a deeper, darker power manipulating Genoa City's elite, setting the stage for a larger conflict. Key insights: grief as a catalyst for transformation. Amy's story highlights how profound loss can ignite a fierce inner resolve. Rather than succumbing to despair, Amy channels her pain into a focused, calculated pursuit of justice. This transformation underlines the powerful psychological concept that trauma, though devastating, can also be a source of strength and purpose. Her illness and impending death only sharpen her resolve, illustrating how mortality can reframe priorities from fear to action. The complexity of power and corruption. The involvement of Kane Ashby and a shadowy boss reveals a multi-layered conspiracy that extends beyond a simple murder. The narrative illustrates how power structures often operate behind the scenes, manipulating events for personal or political gain. Damien's death was not random, but a strategic elimination to protect interests, highlighting how individuals can become expendable pawns in broader schemes. Justice outside the law. Amy's decision to take justice into her own hands addresses the frustration many feel with legal systems that fail to protect or deliver justice. Her vigilante actions, capturing, torturing, and extracting confessions are as ethical questions about morality, retribution, and the limits of lawful justice. This theme resonates in stories where institutional failures compel individuals to seek their own form of accountability. The human cost of manipulation. The revelation that Damien was killed because his presence threatened a romantic reunion between Kane and Lily underscores the cold calculation behind the murder. It exposes how human lives are often sacrificed for selfish, emotional agendas masked by business and power dynamics. This insight emphasizes the dehumanizing aspect of such conspiracies, where individuals become obstacles to be removed rather than people to be valued. The power of truth and evidence. Amy's meticulous gathering of evidence, records, confessions, autopsy photos, and distribution to multiple legal authorities underscores the importance of documentation in combating corruption. It reflects the modern reality where transparency and exposure can be powerful weapons against entrenched wrongdoing, even when direct legal action remains uncertain. The symbolism of maternal vengeance. Amy's role as a mother, fighting for her son's justice, adds a profound emotional layer to the narrative. It taps into universal themes of maternal protection and sacrifice. Her willingness to endure pain, use violence, and face death reflects the depth of a mother's love transformed into unyielding retribution. An archetype deeply rooted in storytelling and myth, foreshadowing a larger conflict. The naming of the boss and the suggestion of a broader conspiracy signals that this story is part of a larger, more intricate web of power struggles in Genoa City. Amy's discovery promises far-reaching consequences, setting up future narratives of political intrigue, personal vendettas, and the collapse of established empires.